While I may not have been aware of it at the time, I reacted with the value of story. Later in my life and work, I saw her on a TV show and thought, that's it. She was singing Pini's opera. Robert Redford made a big step toward becoming a director. He made the movie Ordinary People in 1980, which was not only a hit but also a turning point in his career. It was based on Judith Guest's 1976 book of the same name and was about a rich family that was having a hard time after one son died by accident and another tried to kill himself. The movie really touched my heart because it showed how sadness and guilt can slowly split a family apart. Redford put together a group that gave acts that will be remembered forever. In the role, Donald Sutherland played a dad who was trying to keep his family together. People were shocked when Mary Tyler Moore played a mother who was cold and emotionally detached. Moore is usually cast in parts that are happy and upbeat. Judd Hirsch played a therapist who helped the 20-year-old son who was still alive. Timothy Hutton played the son. He won the Academy Award for Best Supporting Actor for his role, making him the youngest winner of that award, which is still the record. Critics liked Redford's direction because it was moving and paid close attention to the little things. The movie made over $90 million, even though it only cost $6 to make. $2 million, showing that people could relate to its powerful story. Ordinary People got 4 Oscars at the 53rd Academy Awards in 1981. Hutton won Best Supporting Actor and the movie won Best Picture. Redford got Best Director for his first movie, which wasn't something many people in Hollywood had done before. It also got 5 Golden Globes. Robert Downey Jr. called it a devastating portrait of an American family, and Gene Sisk said it was one of the year's best movies. That was when Redford showed that he was more than just an actor. He went behind the camera and changed the course of his career. But he had other plans besides making great movies. He wanted to make changes to the business. He made the Sundance Film Festival because of this idea. When he started the Sundance Institute in 1981, it was the first step on his path to making independent movies. He wanted to give up-and-coming producers a place to work on their skills without the supervision of Hollywood companies. It was the same year that the Institute started Sundance Labs, a program for young directors to try out their ideas and get help from more experienced teachers. The event had been going on since 1978, when it was first called the Utah U.S. There was a film festival, but it had a hard time getting noticed. When Redford took over in 1985, he changed the name to the Sundance Film Festival and moved it to Park City, Utah. Everything changed because of that choice. Sundance became a place where independent films could show their work to people who might not have seen them otherwise. It wasn't long before the event became huge. Steven Soderbergh's Sex, Lies, and Videotape won the top prize at the festival in 1989 and went on to be a public and critical success. It showed that independent movies could do well without being part of Hollywood. Reservoir Dogs, Quentin Tarantino's first movie, opened at Sundance in 1992 and made him famous. In 1994, Kevin Smith's movie Clerks was another big hit. Sundance had grown into the center of independent film in the United States by the late 1990s, as it was no longer just a festival. It is now the biggest event for indie films in the U.S. Hundreds of movies are shown there every year, and people from all over the world come to see them. Redford's goal has never been just to show off movies. He wanted to change how the movie business saw amateur producers. He made sure that new voices could continue to shape the future of film by starting the Sundance Institute, which offered classes, grants, and mentoring. Redford loved more than just movies. He also loved nature. Having a dream of combining art, nature, and fun, he bought land in Utah's Provo Canyon in 1969. He named it Sundance after the role he played in the movie Butch Cassidy and the Sundance Kid. The land was seen by developers as a business chance, but Redford didn't want it to be turned into a commercial getaway. He instead focused on being environmentally friendly and protecting the land. Robert Redford's life has been shaped by love, loss, and a strong desire to make art. The beginning of his first marriage to Lola Van Wagen was like a scene from a movie. In 1958, he ran away to Las Vegas with Lola, a young scholar who had quit college to be with him. He was only 21 years old. They only had $300 between them, so they had to take a car to get to the wedding. But that didn't matter because they had faith in each other and the future they were making. Their unhappy future took a terrible turn in September 1959 when their first child, Scott Anthony Redford, was born. He died of sudden infant death syndrome only 2 months after that. At the time, no one really knew what was wrong, and Redford felt guilty about it for a long time. He said goodnight to his son and woke up the next morning to find him dead in his crib. He would always remember that moment. In the end, he said it was a scar that never fully healed. Scott's grave was close to their home in Provo, Utah, which was a painful reflection of what they had lost. Even as they tried to move on, Redford's life was still painful because of loss. He and Lola had 3 more kids, but in 2020 something terrible happened. Their son James Redford, who was born in May 1962, had been sick for many years because he had primary sclerosing cholangitis, a rare autoimmune disease that affects the liver. He had 2 liver transplants in 1993, but his health was still bad. He made a worthwhile life for himself as a filmmaker and campaigner, and he and his father started the Redford Center to use stories to fight climate change. He died in October 2020, aged 58, from cancer of the bile duct. Redford had already lost his twin brothers soon after they were born, so this was another terrible loss. Redford used his pain to make some of the most powerful acts of his career. He was the lead in the 1984 movie The Natural, which was about a baseball player named Roy Hobbs whose career is ruined by tragedy, but then makes a legendary comeback. 4 Oscars were given to the movie, and it became a classic right away. Redford was able to play the part with both strength and weakness, which made it memorable. Out of Africa, which came out the next year, really took his work to the next level. He played the free-spirited hunter Dennis Finch Hatton opposite Meryl Streep in a big love story based on Karen Blixen's autobiography. The movie came out in 1985 and won 7 Academy Awards, including Best Picture. Redford and Streep had great chemistry, and his role as a man torn between love and freedom gave a story that was already beautiful and sad more meaning. After many years, Redford showed that he could still carry a movie pretty much by himself when he was 77 years old. In the survival story All Is Lost, which came out in 2013, he played a sailor who gets lost at sea. The movie almost never had speech, so his acting was the only thing that told the story. His face and body language were the only things that showed how scared, determined, and tired he was. Critics said it was one of his best roles ever, showing that even in his late 70s, he was still able to command the screen like few others. Next, a move that no one saw coming. Redford joined the Marvel Cinematic Universe in 2014 with the movie Captain America: The Winter Soldier, where he played Alexander Pierce. For an actor who usually plays heroes, playing a high-level SHIELD official who works for Hydra in secret was a shocking turn of events. He played a scary bad guy who was cool but cruel, which added to the movie's themes of power and corruption. Later, he came back for a short but memorable cameo in Avengers: Endgame in 2019. This was one of his last movie roles. By 2018, Redford had been in movies for more than 60 years and thought it was time to stop. In The Old Man and the Gun, his last leading part, he played Forrest Tucker, a real-life career criminal who robbed banks and got away from jail more than once. He brought a lot of fun and energy to the role, even though he was 81 years old. Tucker's story felt more like an adventure than a crime run. Not long after the movie came out, Redford announced that this would be his last part, making his retirement official. When Robert Redford first read the story for The Way We Were, he didn't want to be in it. Katie Morosky, played by Barbra Streisand, got too much attention in the story, which made his character Hubble Gardner feel flat. He told director Sidney Pollack, "The role has no depth," and I asked, "Who is this guy? What does he want?" He didn't want to play a love interest with only one trait, especially in a movie that seemed to be built around Streisand. This artist didn't give up. He hired writers David Rayfield and Alvin Sargent to give Hubble more depth and purpose by giving him a personality. Redford was worried even back then. He was afraid of Streisand's strong attitude on the set. He was afraid that she would take over the show and make his act look bad. He asked at one point, hey, Pollock, she's not going to sing in the middle of the movie, is she? He didn't want the movie to become a show for Streisand's music. He wanted it to stay about the story. She kept trying to get Redford to be her co-star because she was set on having him. She was in Africa shooting up the sandbox when she got a telegram that said only 2 words, Barbara Redford. This was Pollock's way of telling her that Redford had finally decided to be in the movie. The movie was shot in 1972, but the stress never went away. Redford kept his distance from Streisand, which made it hard for her to feel personally connected to him. He was always professional, but she later said that he was hard to get close to. It's possible that the distance helped them do better. Their characters were deeply in love, but they had a lot of problems with their differences, which made the tension feel real on screen. The Way We Were was a huge hit when it first came out in 1973. 2 Academy Awards were given to the movie, and the title song became one of Streisand's most popular songs. But Redford and Streisand never worked together again, even though they got along well on screen. She admired his professionalism and he admired her ability, but their relationship was too complex. Everyone loved Robert Redford, who was Hollywood's golden boy, but he had a pet peeve about one of his co-stars. He didn't want to kiss her in one scene and said her character was shallow. He also made sure they never worked together again. It was so tense that not even the director could fix it. We're going to tell you all about the messy fight they tried to hide from their fans today. Thomas Robert Redford Jr. was born on August 18, 1936 in Santa Monica, California. He is known as Robert Redford to make money for Standard Oil. His dad, Charles Robert Redford Sr., worked long hours. Martha Woodruff Redford, his mother, raised him alone and filled the house with books and stories. She loved movies and books, and Redford's artistic side was shaped by her early on. His great-great-grandfather left England for the United States, so his family had Irish, Scottish, and English roots. In 1849. After that they moved to Van Nuys, California, and Redford spent most of his youth there. He once said it was like being in a cultural mud sea, which means it was boring and uninteresting. He often acted out because he didn't fit in, but he found something different when he got out of the neighborhoods. He often went to Texas to see his mother's family. He spent time in wide open spaces with lots of nature around him. He developed a strong love for nature on those trips that would last his whole life. His dad was strict and realistic, and he cared more about work than spending time with his son. Redford looked up to him, but he never felt close to him. On the other hand, his mother was always there for him. She told him he should look into art, stories, and movies, but bad things happened to Redford when he was 18 years old in 1954. His mom passed away from septicemia, an illness that came on quickly and killed her. His grief over her death left him lost at a time when he was already having a hard time finding his way. He had never been good at school at Van Nuys High School. On the field, things were different from school, where he didn't care much about the work and didn't feel at home. He was a great player who did very well in football and tennis. Pancho Gonzalez, who was a rising star at the time, and he even played tennis together. He got a scholarship to go to the University of Colorado Boulder because of how good he was at baseball. It was a new start for him after he finished in 1954. He had a chance to show himself. He had more freedom in college, but he didn't focus on school or sports. Instead, he made the most of it by going to parties. People saw him as someone who didn't take anything seriously because he liked to drink and skip out on his duties.
The grant had given him a chance, but after only 18 months, he was kicked out of school and lost it. There was more than one time he got into trouble. He was 16 years old when he was arrested for small theft after he was seen stealing gold with a group of kids. The charges were dropped in the end, but it should have taught them. He had always been restless and felt like he didn't fit in with the plans he had for his life. Later, the parts he played, people who broke the rules and looked for something bigger, were shaped by his restless personality. He fell into a downward cycle when he lost both his scholarship and his mother at the same time. He didn't know what to do next. He made up his mind to go. He went on a trip through Europe looking for purpose. As a young artist, Robert Redford went on a trip across Europe in 1956. It was hard for him because his mother had died and he had dropped out of the University of Colorado. He thought Paris would be a great place to start over. Aside from bread and cheese, he didn't spend much money while learning art and taking in the bohemian lifestyle. He drew for hours in coffee shops, on the streets, and in political meetings with leftist student groups. Even though it was fun, something didn't feel right. He began to question his own work as he looked at the works of great artists from the past. He saw that his works were not unique. He tried hard, but he just couldn't come up with a style that made him stand out. This thought made him feel heavy. Even though he worked hard to become an artist, he didn't really feel. He kept that question with him while he and a friend went through Italy in 1957. Their senses helped them get by since they didn't have any money. He had to be more creative and think about life in a new way because of it. When he got back to the USS, he went to Pratt Institute in Brooklyn later that same year to study set design. It had something to do with art, but it felt more useful. Then something strange happened. When he took an acting class, he felt like he had found his place for the first time. He had trouble coming up with new ideas when he painted, but acting came easily to him. It was another way of telling a story, but this time he wasn't trying to find a new style. He was just making the characters come to life. He made a big choice in 1959. He quit Pratt and moved to New York City to join the American Academy of Dramatic Arts. Every year, more than 300 kids tried to get into the school, but only about 100 made it past the first round. Even though the training was tough, Redford did great. People who saw him in plays like The Seagull praised how deep and real he was. He had little money, so he did strange jobs to make ends meet, but playing was always his first love. He had finally found something that made him feel good. Still, there were some strange times in his early playing career. One of his first paid jobs was on a game show in the late 1950s. He should have been paid $75, but he was given a fishing rod instead. That wasn't exactly helpful for a character in New York who was having a hard time. In a strange turn of events, he would later direct the fly fishing movie A River Runs Through It, which seemed like a joke at the time. What seemed like a hard time turned out to be a small but important part of his life. The first real step he took was getting into TV. He was on Alfred Hitchcock Presents in 1961. That show was known for its scary and dark stories. Then in 1962 he got a part in the TV show The Twilight Zone episode Nothing in the Dark. He was Mr. Death, as a calm, almost loving figure who helps an old woman deal with her fear of death. He was cast by director Lamont Johnson because he looked like an angel, which made the role even scarier. It was one of the most memorable episodes of the show, and Redford's acting showed that he could play complicated parts. The play Barefoot in the Park by Neil Simon was Redford's big break on Broadway. The play's opening was on October 23, 1963, with Redford as Paul B.R.D., a young conservative lawyer, and Elizabeth Ashley as the free-spirited Corey. Mike Nichols directed the show. The show was such a hit that it ran for 1,530 runs. It had been going for a long time and was Neil Simon's biggest hit. It was also the 10th longest comedy show in Broadway history. Redford was known for his work. It was clear he was going to be a big star because of his charm, quick wit, and natural stage presence. But Redford had already been in movies before he went to Broadway. His first movie role was as Private Roy Loomis in War Hunt, a low-budget war thriller that came out in 1962. Many people didn't know about the show, but it was more important than people thought. Redford met the director Sidney Pollack on the set, and Pollack would go on to play a big part in his career. Pollack cast Redford in two movies that helped make him one of Hollywood's biggest stars. Jeremiah Johnson in 1972 and Out of Africa in 1985.
Also,
War Hunt didn't make him popular, but it put him in touch with the right people and let him work on a movie set for the first time. It was the right time for him to switch from theater to movies. After Barefoot in the Park did well, Hollywood wanted to work with him. In 1967, he played the same part again in the movie version, which starred Jane Fonda. The movie made $30 million around the world, even though it only cost $2 million. Redford wasn't just good at acting on stage, he had the same charm on screen too, and people loved him. After that, he got the part that changed his life. In 1969, he played the dangerous criminal Sundance in the movie Butch Cassidy and the Sundance Kid, which stars Paul Newman as Butch. The movie changed the Western genre by combining comedy, action, and friendship. It was directed by George Roy Hill and written by William Goldman. When it came out on September 24, 1969, it made over $100 million, making it the biggest hit of the year. The movie will always be remembered for the way Redford and Newman worked together. They were one of the most famous comedy teams in movie history because of how well they got along and how scenes like when they tried to speak Spanish but failed while running away to Bolivia, or the famous ending shootout made the movie famous. 4 Oscars were given to it, including one for Goldman for Best Original Screenplay. But Redford almost didn't get the part. Steve McQueen was supposed to play the part in Sundance, but he dropped out because of a contract disagreement. When Redford stepped in, it changed the rest of his career. The movie made him a star in Hollywood, and he became friends with Newman for life. They worked together again in 1973's The Sting, which was another huge hit, and won 7 Academy Awards including Best Picture. Redford was picky about the parts he took on, even as his fame grew. In 1967, he turned down the lead part of Benjamin Braddock in The Graduate, even though director Mike Nichols chose someone else. But Nichols wasn't sure. He thought Redford was too sure of himself to play a college graduate who is awkward and unsure of what to do. Nichols asked Redford if he had ever had problems with relationships or making. Redford didn't even understand the question. Nichols didn't need any more proof. He instead cast Dustin Hoffman in the part, and the movie became a classic. Redford turned down a part in Who's Afraid of Virginia Woolf, yet another project by Mike Nichols. Both movies got great reviews and won a lot of Oscars, but Redford didn't feel bad about what he did. He didn't just want parts that made him popular, he also wanted roles that made him think. He didn't want to be labeled as just another Hollywood star. Robert Redford's career took a big turn when he played The Sting 1973. Along with Paul Newman, he worked with George Roy Hill again on this movie after their success in Butch Cassidy and the Sundance Kid 1969. In this movie, Redford played Johnny Hooker, a young con artist who is trying to trick Doyle Lonigan, a strong mob boss. As Lonigan, Robert Shaw did a great job of finding the right mix between stress and charm. The way Redford played the part was sharp, sure of itself, and full of energy. He was nominated for his first and only Academy Award for Best Actor for this role. Jack Lemmon won the Oscar for Save the Tiger 1973, but Redford made a huge difference. In and of itself, the movie was a huge hit. It made over $159 million at the box office, which is a big return on the $5 it cost to make. Budget of $5 million. It was the highest grossing movie of 1974, and taking inflation into account, it is still one of the 20 highest grossing movies of all time. The Sting won 7 Oscars at the 46th Academy Awards. It won Best Picture, Best Director and Best Original Screenplay. Marvin Hamlish's arrangements of Scott Joplin's famous pieces also helped bring ragtime music back to life. Another great thing about the movie was how well Redford and Newman got along. Together they became one of the most famous film pairs ever. The movie also made history when Julia Phillips won Best Picture and became the first woman to do so. For Redford, The Sting showed that he could be the hero in a big movie and give his acting depth. It proved he was more than just a Hollywood star, he was a serious actor who would always be popular. This is when Redford's ability to play many roles became even more clear. 3 movies he was in between 1972 and 1976 showed different parts of his acting skill. He worked with Barbra Streisand in the 1973 love film The Way We Were. He played Hubble Gardner, a writer whose relationship with Streisand's Katie Morosky, who was very political, was doomed from the start. It was the 5th most successful movie of 1973 and made $50 million at the box office. Its last scene outside of New York's Plaza Hotel became one of the most famous scenes in movie history. Jeremiah Johnson 1972 was not at all like this. It was directed by Sidney Pollack and was about a mountain man who was alone and had to survive in the hard desert. Redford didn't say much in the movie. His facial reactions and body language were enough to make the character come to life. The movie, which was shot in Utah's beautiful scenery, made $44.7 million, one of the most money he made all year. It showed that Redford could carry a movie by himself without speech or action that moves quickly. Then there was All the President's Men 1976, a political thriller that is still thought to be one of the most important movies ever made about news. Redford played Bob Woodward and Dustin Hoffman played Carl Bernstein. They were both reporters for the Washington Post who broke the Watergate story. The movie was up for 8 Academy Awards and won 4 of them. Redford created it through his business, Wildwood Enterprises, which shows that he has a lot of power behind the camera as well. More than just a hit, it changed the way movies showed critical reporting for decades to come. You could say that Redford was one of the most respected stars in Hollywood in the 1970s. He was also one of the most popular at the box office. When prices were taken into account, his movies made more than $3 billion between 1973 and 1976. 3 of Redford's movies, The Sting, The Great Gatsby, and a re-release of Butch Cassidy and the Sundance Kid, were among the top 10 most popular movies of 1974. It hadn't been since 1946 when Bing Crosby ruled the box office. Since then, Redford was the face of Hollywood's new age. He was able to balance artistic goals with business success, but not every time he worked with someone, things went as smoothly as they did in the movies. He was in 4 movies with Jane Fonda, and she said that working with Redford wasn't always easy. It was clear that they got along in movies like Barefoot in the Park 1967 and The Electric Horseman 1979, but things were more difficult behind the scenes. Later, Fonda said that Redford didn't like shooting scenes with kissing. He was also moody on set, which made her feel like she was doing something wrong some of the time. Over time, she understood that he might have had problems with women that he hadn't dealt with. She still loved him no matter what. She said he was sweet but detached, which was one of the things that made their relationship on screen so interesting. Years later at the Cannes Film Festival, Fonda talked about the time they spent working together. She told him that she had always loved him at work, even though their relationship in real life was more difficult. Their work together showed that what happens behind the scenes doesn't always match what viewers see in the end.